Dave, have you ever been watching The Lord of the Rings and you see some weird stuff like Sam tugging on his elvish rope and it just kind of comes loose and, it just kind of... You're like, what's going on there? Is he just really bad at tying knots, or did the rope... Like, is there some magical qualities about that rope? Or just... That happens to me all the time. I just see little things like that. I'm kind of going... What's going on there now? And then I just kind of get swept up in the next scene and I kind of forget to come back and ask myself these questions. So I'm going to start this episode. Welcome everyone to the episode. Please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. But we're getting straight into it. So Dave, what are your opinions on the elvish rope that we see in the... is that an extended scene, by the way, in the Two Towers?
Is that the opening scene? No, sorry. The opening scene is obviously Gandalf on the Balrog, but
it is, yeah. It's the title scene where it comes up and it says it comes up and it says the Two Towers, and it shows, because when it shows the Two Towers, it's when Frodo and Sam are both scaling down the side of the mountain. They're kind of abseiling down, and then
it's been so long since I've seen the theatricals, I just don't know anymore. It is something I want to go and do.
If you don't know what scene we're talking about, it could be that it's a deleted scene and it's in the extended.
But that is what we're talking about for this whole
episode. No, this will be the first 2 minutes. So basically, there is a scene. Well, Dave, why don't you describe it to our listeners?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm thankful that you finished that sentence when you said Sam tugging on his elvish rope. I'm glad it was an elvish rope that you were talking about. And yeah, I suppose what I think that scene always gets me because I'm like, God, why is he so bad? He's like, oh, one of my nuts, there's no way of loosening that, or whatever he says, and then straight away it becomes loose. But obviously those 3 words uttered by Frodo just solves the whole riddle, real elvish rope, and it kind of it just brings you back to the magic of the elves, and this rope could have seriously killed the 2 hobbits and broken their necks, but no, it was the magic of the elves that kept them safe and untied it so that no one could follow them down. I always just in the moment think he's crap at tying knots, but then immediately I'm like, oh yeah, it's the magic of the elves. So it is a special rope.
Exactly, it is actually a special rope. Sam is not, in fact, crap at tying knots.
It's one of his skills.
Yeah, if you go back and if you read that scene from the books, he's quite adamant. He's saying, Frodo actually just thinks that the rope has come loose, and he says it to Sam. He's like, "Oh, it looks like it just came loose, or maybe it broke or something." Mm-hmm. And Sam's looking at the end of it. Sam looks at the end of the rope and sees that it hasn't broken, and so he says, "No, it has." And then so Frodo's like, "Well, I guess there's only one other conclusion." And Sam's really look. It's come down through our family that we're really good at tying knots. So he's really adamant about it. But the fact is that it is actually...
He couldn't tie the knot with Rosie, though. Not for a long, long time. Eventually.
He was. He tied the knot. He had 13 children, so that's fairly tied the knot. I'd say he should have tied his own ropes maybe after the first 1 or 2 children came along. Anyway, so getting into the details. So this kind of was the kind of idea behind this episode. So I was like, I wonder if there's any other cool... mysterious or kind of objects in Middle Earth that have these kind of weird properties or whatever. And it kind of went into that, but then I kind of branched out. And what we're going to do in today's episode is we're going to be looking at just basically lots of different artifacts from the world of Lord of the Rings. And some of them will be very well known. Some of them will be a little bit, not as well known. I'm not going to look at things that we've already seen before, obviously the One Ring, the Rings of Power, the... big weapons that have been used, because we've done episodes on all those types of things. And I think I kind of wanted to shine a light on some of the other kind of objects and artifacts that are maybe a little bit, underrepresented. So we wanted to give them a bit of a shout out. So just to briefly finish what we're speaking about there on that elvish rope, this is called Hithlane was the name of this item. So Hithlane was actually the material that comprised this versatile elven rope, and in the Sindarin language of the elves, Hithlane is a compound word, which is made of hith, which means mist, and lane, which means thread. So it's like the misty thread, I suppose.
Yeah.
And the exact nature of this material is unknown. However, it proved to be an invaluable tool for Frodo and Sam during their quest to destroy the One Ring. And we know that it's thin, it's lightweight, it's flexible, and it's also incredibly strong. And it has what actually says it has several magical properties. And it is, so one of these ones, it's listed that's saying that even if when a knot is out of reach, it could be unknotted with just a thought from the owner. So that's basically what happened in that scene. That Sam was kind of
telepathic.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit of like telepathy being used there.
But
so
we do know the nature of Hithlane. It comes from its fiber from the Malorn tree. That's one of the things that we discussed in the tree episode. The Malorn tree produces many things such as like the leaves for lembas bread, like to wrap it up. So it's in its little tinfoil.
There you go, guys. It's all coming full circle. Thank God we did that trees episode.
Go back and listen to it. It needs a second listen. It's like the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah, I think I was falling asleep at that point.
That was the start.
It was a good sleep I had. So another quality of that. I'll put it out to you. Do you know any other qualities, any other magical or mysterious qualities that rope had that we see in the movies?
In the movies, that is the only scene I can think of where we get the rope.
What else does the rope do? What else do they do with the rope?
They tie Smeagol's neck, or they put it around Smeagol's neck.
And what does he say about the rope?
That's right. It burns, it freezes, and it gnaws, or something like that.
Yes,
I think it's because of his being, and he's obviously in a very dark place at that moment. It's almost like he's allergic to the beautiful nature of Elvish made products. So this rope is almost like giving him a burn. Which he says. So
that is one of the other properties of this rope, that it's scalding to the touch, just to beings who are corrupted by evil, such as Gollum. So obviously that's why when Sam and Frodo were holding it, they weren't like, "Oh, it burns." Yeah, just like sliding down the rope, and like they got rope burn. I suppose that's the thing.
I think that scene as well, the opening scene where they are going down the rope. I'd imagine if you're reading the book, you just imagine this beautiful, big, thick rope that's like nice.
Yeah, it's so skinny in the
it's
thing.
So
it looks
skinny,
like it's impossible to hold on to.
Do you know when they fall and they slip? That looks like it would literally cut through your hand. But maybe that's another Elvish quality. It doesn't give you a rope burn.
There is no rope burn unless you're Gollum and you're evil, and then it'll burn the hell out of you. So that is the first item on our list. So we're gonna go swiftly onto our next item, and we're probably gonna look at maybe the number one. So if I were to say to you, Dave, what is, I'm going to ask you, and I haven't researched this, so I don't know, but what do you think is this is like all things in our podcast, what do you think is the number one selling piece of Lord of the Rings jewelry?
Do you mean in real life? Because that would have to
be in real life. Sorry, yes.
Okay, right. I would say it would be the Elisar thing.
The Evenstar.
The Evenstar. That, or probably like, the leaves of fucking whatever the hobbits wear.
Yeah, the leaves of Lorien.
Yeah. Those two.
Not idly do they fall.
Not idly do they fall, but yeah, the Elven. What the hell is it called? The Elvenstar? The Evenstar.
The Evenstar. Yes.
Sorry,
is it even a star?
Yeah, I don't
know. Yeah, very good. Now again, no research whatsoever. Not even.
You're just throwing that out there, right?
I'm just saying that's because when you think of like Lord of the Rings jewelry or things like that, that's just the number one thing that comes into your mind. If you Google Lord of the Rings jewelry, that's what you're just going to see images of that straight away.
Beautiful jewelry, yes, but I'd imagine that the One Ring is also extremely popular.
That's true.
That's what I thought you were heading
We're not
for
looking
first.
at the One Ring. No, we're not looking at the One Ring because you shut your mouth.
Shut your dirty mouth.
So we're going to look at that item. So obviously, as I said, it's probably it's probably one of the highest selling pieces of beautiful jewelry from Lord of the Rings. So what is so special about it, and what do we know about the Evenstar? Let's just answer that, Dave. What do we know about the Evenstar from the films?
Okay, well, first of all, it would probably be the most sold piece of jewelry in both of our opinions, without any research, because it's just aesthetically beautiful and pleasing on the eye, and especially for girls who would more so than guys wear jewelry or necklaces. It's a really nice. I think even just like the symmetry of it and the way it shines as well. It's made of like silver and probably some other little gems and jewels in there. But getting on to its importance in the movie, I think it's different to the book, but it really represents the life force of Arwen, and like Peter Jackson uses this as a symbol. We see when Aragorn dreams about dropping it and it smashes, and then I think at some point it cuts to Arwen and she's dying, and there's another scene where the camera focuses on the Evenstar and it kind of looks duller than it normally is. And
Yeah.
I think, is it Elrond at that time that says the life of my daughter is leaving, or the soul of my daughter is
We'll get into
scared the
that now.
bejesus out of her.
We'll get into that, but you're answering my question way too well and way better than I'd
Okay,
expected.
good.
So, very well done. Good job. 10 marks for you. So,
Thank you.
So yes, so in the movies, now we're just focused on the movies for a moment here
Mm-hmm.
because we'll get into that in a moment. So in the movies, we can see that Arwen, she gives this Evenstar, this jewel to Aragorn, and then she declares that she chooses a mortal life. And he's like, you cannot give me this, or whatever. And she's like, it is a gift. No, that's the different part. She was like, it was a gift. Keep it. And she's all like,
mine to give to whom I please, or something like that. But also,
to whom I will.
in that moment, especially when I was a kid, I placed a lot of emphasis on this actual piece of jewelry.
So this is my question. What's
right.
going on? Does she actually have her own life force in that jewel or in that necklace, or what is the deal?
No, absolutely not. Like it's just a representation of her giving her life to Aragorn and becoming a mortal woman, or not a...
Well done, David.
Yeah.
Very impressed. So yes,
Thank you.
There's no... her soul is inside the jewel and now giving it to Aragorn
not a Pokeball.
means... So it's just a really important heirloom. That's basically all it is. And her giving it to him kind of... It's like giving, your girlfriend your grandmother's engagement ring or something. It'd be like, okay, we're going all the way.
Exactly.
Kind of
and if you lose it, you're dead. So it's basically the same thing. It's like a promise ring as well.
Yeah, true. So, and then again, you touched on it just a moment ago, but what actually happened to this jewel? Did it really smash when Aragorn dropped it, or was that still like his vision or whatever was going on? Because he was just there chatting away to Sauron on the blower on the old Palantir.
On the old Palantir, yeah. In that scene, I'm trying to remember now, because that scene, it makes it look like he is there in real life, and he is talking to Sauron on the Palantir, and it smashes.
He has him on FaceTime.
And then and it immediately cuts to him riding towards the Morannon. And it's clearly, the camera is fixated on his chest, as it should be, and there is no Evenstar there. So
yes,
it is real,
exactly.
Right? I mistakenly said it was a dream, but
it wasn't a dream. There was definitely vision or something going on. But now I don't have a definite answer for you. But there's just I can tell you that there's lots of online discussion as to whether or not it actually smashed. And some people say yes, and some people say no. But I can confirm that he's not actually seen wearing it again after that scene.
Right.
So it is kind of likely that it did smash. Now, remember, as I said, it was only an heirloom. And again, I remember like one of the first times I was watching this film, and I thought it was like tied to her life force, and then it smashed. I was like, he's just killed her. Oh my God.
This is like it's like the ring to Sauron. This thing is like attached to Arwen. But yeah, when he smashes it, again, it is representation, but I think it's supposed to be Sauron getting into the mind of Aragorn and almost,
I think
like, pulling that off his neck.
I've always found that cutscene just very jarring. It's one of my least favorite cutscenes. I don't know why, but there's something. It's just like he smashes the thing, and it's just this like very. It's almost like a traumatic moment for Aragorn to drop this jewel that represented something so important, and it smashes again. Whether it's real or whether it's a vision, doesn't matter. It seems like that would be like quite trauma inducing, and then suddenly it just cuts to this scene where it's kind of like this triumphant marching out in towards battle, and I'm kind of going. That there should have been a little something in between there. I think
you're right.
To kind of
it is jarring.
I don't know.
I don't think that is supposed to be a triumphant march. Of course, they're kind of marching to their doom in a way. But you're absolutely right. That cut, there's something about it, because immediately before that scene is like slow mo. There's all loads of music, and it's all like Sauron's whispers of, and then it just like cuts, and then like suddenly,
well done.
suddenly it's just like a completely different vibe. So Yeah,
Sure.
it is a bit jarring.
Right. So just to go back on the whole thing of the online discussion. So that's one reason why people would say it definitely did smash, because it's never seen again really on Aragorn. However, it is seen in Elrond's vision. Or sorry, Arwen's vision. Excuse me. Well, Elrond had the same vision, I believe, as well.
Oh, right.
But Arwen's vision of her son, and he's wearing. Do you remember it zooms in and he's wearing the thing there as well? And loads of people are like, oh, well, she saw it in the visions of that. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, you're using the word vision, and that's what it is. And visions are never like going to be 100% like this. And it's even like Galadriel's mirror. Like, you see visions, and it's kind of like some things can come true, some things maybe it's more or less. So I wouldn't hang my hat on that vision, is what I'm trying to say. Right. But anyway, let's move on to the next thing, which is a little side note, which is, what is the deal with Arwen's fate being tied to the ring? And is this actually a thing, or is this like just a kind of a movie fabrication?
As far as I'm aware, that is a complete movie fabrication, and it's almost like a throwaway line by Elrond to just up the stakes, where he says Arwen's fate is now attached to the ring or something, and you're kind of like, oh, I think it is one of those lines that's thrown away, but I never feel anything towards it. I don't feel particularly attached to that side story or that side quest that Elrond throws at Aragorn. I think
he's just like, did you see Arwen just started following the ring on Instagram? Oh my god.
But I think it's just like it's Elrond just trying to like get Aragorn to hurry up, but like I don't know.
Will you ever bend that knee, Aragorn? Will you come on? So what I would say to that is that all the elves' fate are in some way linked to the One Ring, and this is both because the 3 elven rings of power, they will fade once the One Ring has been destroyed, and then all the things that they were used to create will also fade. And also because the destruction of Sauron will bring about the end of the age of the elves, and that will start a new age of men, which was the 4th age. And the elves will then eventually pass out of the lands and across the sea into the west. But in the movie adaptations, Arwen's fate is joined to the ring in a much more specific and unusual way, which means that Frodo, as he bears the ring closer and closer to Mount Doom, Arwen's, like, her aura directly begins to fade. And it is suggested in the film, and we've got a couple of quotes here from Elrond where he says, quote, Arwen is dying. She will not long survive the evil that spreads through Mordor. And then he also says, as Sauron's power grows, her strength wanes. Her fate is now tied to the One Ring. So he definitely clearly says it there. Whereas, and again, this is a kind of a movie thing. But on that note, I should tell you, that's all a movie thing. That whole jewel doesn't exist in the books. There is no Evenstar. So there is no actual jewel that, like, that Arwen gives to Aragorn and says, my life is whatever. There's no heirloom at all. There is something that's very, very similar, which is called the Elfstone, which is a famous green jewel that Galadriel gives to Aragorn just before the Fellowship leaves Lothlorien. So,
isn't that one of Aragorn's nicknames as well?
That is correct, Dave. Good man yourself. Well done. He is called the Elfstone, or he's called Elisar, which is the name for the Elfstone. So, a quote here from Galadriel is, "This stone I gave to Celebrian, my daughter, and she to hers. And now it comes to you as a token of hope. In this hour, take the name that was foretold for you, Elisar, the Elfstone of the House of Elendil." So, the stone it's worn by Aragorn, and this later causes him to be given the name Elisar by the people of Minas Tirith, if you remember, after the battle in the Pelennor Fields, when Aragorn's going like around tent to tent, kind of healing people. He's wearing this jewel, and the local people start to call him Elisar, and they start to call him the Elfstone. Those are the names that he's like.
Would speak Sindarin as well.
They would have a Sindarin in Minas Tirith, yes.
Yeah.
So Tolkien also calls it the Elisar, or the Stone of Earendil, and describes it as being set in an eagle-shaped silver brooch. Nice. So there you go. There are a variety of stories about the jewel's origin in Unfinished Tales. I'll just briefly, very quickly go through a couple of those. So there was, in Gondolin, there was a jewel smith named Enerdil, and he was the greatest of that craft among the Noldor after the death of Feanor. And it came into his heart to make a jewel within which the clear light of the sun should be imprisoned, but the jewel should be green as leaves. And he made this thing, and even the Noldor marvelled at it. For it is said that those who looked through this stone saw things that were withered or burned, healed again, or as they were in the grace of their youth. and that the hands of one who held it brought to all that they touched healing from hurt. So that was one of the stories from the Unfinished Tales. And the gem was then given to Idril, the fairest in Gondolin, and she in turn gave it to her son, Eärendil, and he takes it to Valinor and he never returns. Let me see. I'm going to just very briefly give you another couple of little versions. So here there's a little divergence of the story then into two different versions, which is that Gandalf then, so the jewel ends up being taken off to Valinor, and Gandalf then brings it back from Valinor, and he gives it to Galadriel as a token from Yavanna that the Valar have not forsaken Middle-earth. And in this version, Gandalf also remarks prophetically to Galadriel that she will only hold it for a little while before she passes it to another who will also be called Elisar. So that was the first one. And the second version is that Galadriel is pained at the state of Middle-earth and wants something to help heal its wounds. And Celebrimbor, who is in love with Galadriel, remakes the jewel at her behest. And it's interesting to note that Celebrimbor was also in Gondolin at the time of Eärendil, and he learned much from him. Although we're more familiar with Celebrimbor and the Rings of Power that he made, he was actually overshadowed by the superior skill of Eärendil, who was second only to Fëanor.
Wow.
And there are actually at least two more versions that I've recently read which involve different scenarios with the jewel passing down through different people, but all versions end with the elfstone in Galadriel's possession, and then she then gives it to her daughter Celebrian, who in turn gives it to Arwen, and it nonetheless is in Galadriel's keeping in Lothlorien before she passes it on to Aragorn. And according to Tolkien, this also held the function of a wedding gift from the family of the bride to the groom. So there you go. Big
Arwen...
long spiel about the family of the bride. So Arwen's family to the groom to Aragorn.
I think I like the version of Yavanna giving it to Gandalf. Yeah, Gandalf bringing it over and be like, cool. By the way, here's
a token from Yavanna.
Here's a symbol that we haven't been abandoned by the Valar, but they won't come themselves. They're giving it to me to just pass on. But
he says, "I have a token. I was bidden to show thee."
Yeah.
And he gives it Frodo's Mithril shirt.
Yeah. But also
moving on.
But I just want to say about
too late.
No, I understand why Jackson had to make a completely different jewel and do it in that whole way of Arwen gifting it to Aragorn. Like we said, we needed some sort of representation, and I suppose if you're not a fan of Lord of the Rings, you're kind of like, what? Is she dying or what's going on? And it makes sense to just have her life force in a jewel. But he never says in particularly, this is where her soul is, and you're killing her by dropping it. It's all just for the eyes. And I think it's great. I think he's done a great job.
It's a gift for the eyes. Yes. Very, very good.
I have a token I was bidden to show thee. Oh.
So moving on to our next item on the list, and this one is again another one that will be very common or very well known to all of our listeners, I'm sure. It is the Arkenstone. So this was a wondrous large white gem that was discovered beneath Erebor, also known as the Lonely Mountain, and it was discovered by Thorin's ancestor Thrain the Old, and it was shaped by the dwarves. The Arkenstone became the family heirloom of Durin's line, but it was lost when the dragon Smaug captures the mountain from the dwarves. The Arkenstone shone of its own inner light, but having been cut and fashioned by the dwarves, it also reflected and manipulated any light glancing upon its surface with marvelous beauty. It was also called the heart of the mountain, and as Thorin describes to Bilbo, quote, "It shone like silver in the firelight, like water in the sun, like snow under the stars, like rain upon the moon." It's a nice little quote there.
Very nice.
Thorin. And when Bilbo Baggins found it on Smaug's golden bed deep inside the Lonely Mountain, he pocketed it, having learned how much Thorin valued it, as all good hobbits should do, and all good thieves should do, I suppose. While the dwarves with Thorin sorted the treasure, Thorin sought only the Arkenstone, unaware that Bilbo was hiding it in his pillow. When the dwarves refused to share any of the treasure with Bard, who had killed Smaug, and with King Thranduil, Bilbo crept out of the dwarves' fort inside the mountain, and he gave them the Arkenstone. Bard, Thranduil, and Gandalf then tried to trade it for Bilbo's 14th share of Smaug's hoard. and the dispute was interrupted by goblins and wargs from the Grey Mountains, and the Battle of the Five Armies ensued, and Thorin was killed. And then when Thorin was buried deep under Erebor, Bard placed the Arkenstone on Thorin's breast. So that was a nice little touch.
Yeah.
Bard. So fair play to him. So that was the Arkenstone, and basically Tolkien took the name from the Old English or Old Norse Jarknastine, which means precious stone. I thought it was like, I don't know how to pronounce that there. I just saw a J and a K, and I was like, Jägermeister? And the word actually appears in several Old English poems. So there you go. But how is its representation different from the films and the books? Now, that's something that we should just quickly look at as well, because I'd say a lot of people here will be more familiar with the films than they would be with the books. Mm-hmm. So in the first Hobbit movie, obviously a long prologue introduces the Arkenstone as a kind of, it's almost like this kind of like MacGuffin. And it's an object that just kind of serves to keep the plot in motion.
Yeah.
And it is presented similarly to the One Ring in the Lord of the Rings movies. It's like it has a similar power of corruption. However, in the book, the Arkenstone is not mentioned until Smaug famously converses with Bilbo. And Thorin does not mention it until after Smaug is defeated. So while the Arkenstone is presented as a precious heirloom, it was never the entire goal of the adventure from the beginning. And it kind of, in the movies, it kind of took away from the actual goal of the adventure, which was that the dwarves were getting back home.
Yeah.
And, it sort of replaced the idea of it being like the king who wants his crown and, he wants the precious thing and whatever. So, but, I can see the idea of it in the movie.
It serves similarly to Arwen's... Evenstar. It's just supposed to like represent, like I think in the Hobbit movie they call it the heart of the mountain. I think you said that's another name for it anyways, but they kind of say it like our quest is to reclaim our homeland and to find the heart of the mountain, and like that it's kind of like the crown. It's like, if I own this jewel, I am the king of this mountain, but it also comes with like a sickness, whereas in the film in the book it's more like dragon sickness is the...
Yeah. Do you know what it's like? It's like the black saber in Mandalorian, where it's like you can't rule Mandalore until you have the black saber kind of thing. It's like he's like, I can't rule the Lonely Mountain until I've actually found this jewel. That's the King's Stone as well, they call it.
Yeah.
Or the King's Jewel, sorry, maybe.
I don't know why they changed that for the film, because it was perfectly fine on its own. But I think maybe it's just easier for an audience to understand the story if you have whatever you said, like a MacGuffin to chase, or a doohickey as they're sometimes called. Just it just makes sense, especially if you're like, okay, we've got fans of the Lord of the Rings. Maybe the studios behind The Hobbit were not very, they didn't think the audiences would be smart enough to realize, like, we don't just follow journeys that chase after shiny objects. We want a good story, and if the story's good enough, we'll watch it and enjoy it. But it's a change, but it's nothing too major. It just puts way more emphasis on something that doesn't require that much emphasis. By the way, I liked as well when you said Bilbo pocketed it, and I think I mentioned it before in this podcast where it was Stephen Fry was doing the audiobooks for Harry Potter, and in the first book there's a phrase that says Harry pocketed his wand, or he took his wand and he pocketed it. And Stephen Fry had real difficulty saying that sentence, so J.K. Rowling made sure to add that phrase into every single book afterwards.
No way.
Yeah, it's cool.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It's very meta.
Very meta. Moving on to the next item on our list is going to be, we're going to look at very quickly now at the Crown of Gondor. So this obviously is, who wears this crown, Dave?
Is it King Elisar?
It is King Elisar, good man, also known as Aragorn or Strider. Woo! So this is the chief token of royalty of Gondor, and it's also referred to as the winged crown, the silver or white crown, and the crown of Elendil. In The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien describes it by saying, quote, "It was shaped like the helms of the guards of the citadel, save that it was loftier, and it was all white, and the wings at either side were wrought of pearl and silver in the likeness of the wings of a seabird. For it was the emblem of the king who came over the sea, and 7 gems of adamant were set in the circlet, and upon its summit was set a single jewel, the light of which went up like a flame."
Lovely.
So,
beautiful.
Very nice. Very nice. Tolkien's pretty good at describing stuff, isn't he?
Yeah, he's not bad. I think there's a difference. The movie, it's not displayed as all white. It is silver.
No. It is silver, yeah.
But it does, I'm sure it probably has all those jewels of adamant. And obviously the feathers
I'm
of the
adamant
seabirds.
that it does.
Yeah, I'm fairly adamant now. Adamantium.
Yeah. So in a letter, Tolkien describes the crown as very tall, like that of Egypt, but with wings attached, not set straight back, but at an angle. He also made a sketch of the crown reproduced in J.R.R. Tolkien, artist and illustrator. So we all know that Tolkien was good at like just doing little sketches and stuff as well to kind of really drive home his point and be like, this is what I mean, guys. Just get it, right?
What does he mean by it was tall like Egypt? Like Egypt? Does he mean the pyramids or the Sphinx?
I don't know. Maybe like, isn't weird. It is kind of weird. I suppose in Egypt there's lots of things where they have these wings and they kind of point them up in an angle.
The like cats, the cat things where they have the wings and they're pointing in front of them, kind of almost cupping in a triangle formation.
Isn't it on like the Ark of the Covenant as well? Is it like
at the four corners?
Indiana Jones anyway.
Isn't it the four corners? They have that kind of wing thing. Well,
I think there's actually like little like models standing on the top on the top of the ark, and they're pointing wings at each other.
Sorry, you're right. Yeah, not on the four corners. It's just two facing each other. Also, and those things called obelisks, the really tall structures with hieroglyphics on them. They're just kind of like random statues. Like they're cuboid, and then at the top there'd be like a little pyramid, and along the whole body of it, it's like a tower. And on the body of them, they would have hieroglyphics. They're very Egyptian.
Very good. Moving on. No, just to continue on with the Crown of Gondor, then the first Crown of Gondor was the helmet that Isildur had worn at the Battle of Dagorlad. But that later, during the reign of King Atanatar II, a new crown was made of silver and jewels. This crown was worn by all subsequent kings of Gondor. Traditionally, a father passed the crown to his heir before he died, and if the heir was not present when the king died, the crown was set in the king's tomb, and his heir would later go alone into the Hallows to retrieve it. Now, in the year 2050, the Lord of the Nazgul, and you might remember this, Dave, because we've done an episode on this before, the Lord of the Nazgul challenged King Eärnur to single combat, and Eärnur left the crown on the tomb of his father Eärnil II, and he went to Minas Morgul, and he was never seen again. So if you remember that story, spooky. It actually appears in the appendices of the Return of the King. So when he was going off to single combat with the Lord of the Nazgul, the Witch King, before he left, he took off his crown and left it in this place, knowing that he was probably not coming back. So that was kind of cool.
It's cool that he respected the crown so much, that he would leave it behind.
Yeah. So, and then obviously he was the last king. That was the last king, and that's why we did an episode on him last season. So go back and listen to that one, guys, as well. Really good episode. King Eärnur, a bit of a boss. So from that time on, then the stewards, of course, ruled Gondor in the absence of the king, and that crown remained in the Hallows, and the stewards bore a white rod as the token of their office. And before the coronation of Aragorn, or King Elessar, the steward Faramir went to the Hallows and retrieved the crown from Eärnil's tomb. And so that was like, all those years passed and the crown just stayed in that little position.
Yeah.
And then the crown was placed in a casket of black, and it was bound with silver, and it was carried to the great gate of Minas Tirith by 4 guards of the citadel. And then at Aragorn's request, Frodo Baggins brought the crown forward and gave it to Gandalf, who set it upon Aragorn's head. And then as king, Aragorn bore both the crown of Gondor and the scepter of Annuminas. And that was the chief token of royalty of Arnor. And the 2 kingdoms were reunited under his reign before his death in the year 120.
Nice.
And then Aragorn passed the crown and scepter to his son and heir, Eldarion. So there you go. So that's the crown. Now, just very, very quickly to just give a little shout out as well as another one on the list we could say is the object I just mentioned a moment ago, which is the scepter of Annuminas, which is basically in Arnor, the other kingdom. They didn't actually wear a crown, the kings. They just actually held this scepter. So then Aragorn, when he became king, he was wearing the crown and holding the scepter, and he was like, I'm proper king of the castle. I'm king of 2 castles. So this was the chief emblem of royalty in the northern kingdom of Arnor. And the scepter originally was the staff borne by the lords of the Andúnie in Númenor, a silver rod patterned after the scepter of the kings of Númenor. The scepter of the kings was lost with Ar-Pharazôn in the downfall of Númenor, but Elendil, the son of the last lord of Andúnie, took his father's staff with him when he escaped to Middle-earth and founded the kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor. While the kings of Gondor wore the crown, the kings of Arnor bore the scepter, as I mentioned before. And as the kings of Arnor ruled for 7 centuries from the city of Anúminas, the scepter became known as the Scepter of Anúminas. So there we are.
Cool.
And there you go. It says then by the end of the Third Age, the Scepter of Anúminas was over 5,000 years old and was accounted the oldest surviving artifact in Middle-earth made by men.
Oh, wow.
And on Midsummer's Eve of the year 3019, Elrond brought the scepter to Minas Tirith and presented it to Aragorn, and that was during his coronation as well. So 5,000 years later on.
That's an old
Aragorn
piece of crap, I'd say. Oh, was it made of wood?
It absolutely stank.
A lot of splinters. Yeah, geez, you wouldn't see me holding that without quickly putting on some hand wash after that. Or some disinfected, yeah. Some moisturizer. Yeah, it's a bunch of do over.
We're going to go straight into our next item, Dave. I'm going to ask you very quickly about this item and when we see it. And it actually also appeared in one of our podcasts recently, which was a particular ring. Which ring do you think I'm speaking about?
Is it the ring of Barahir?
It is indeed. It is indeed. Would you like to tell our listeners a little bit about the ring of Barahir?
Ah, crap. It has... balls. Okay, so there's 2 serpents. One devouring the other, while the other's head is crowned is wearing a crown of golden flowers, something like that.
Very good.
There's also a green gem on it, right?
With emerald eyes.
With emerald eyes, that's what it is. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So 2
serpents with emerald eyes.
Yeah, one devouring the other with a head of golden flowers.
Very good.
That's
very
quoted
good.
Grima,
so,
in case anyone isn't sure what we're just randomly quoting.
So, and yeah, this is a ring that we do see in the films. We see Aragorn wearing this ring, and it's quite an important ring. Grima notices it, and that's how he recognizes. So he tells Saruman, and that's what Saruman uses to recognize that. Oh, so Gandalf thinks he's found Isildur's heir.
Yeah,
he is a fool. So this ring, just to give you a little bit of information about this ring, it is a ring given to Barahir, this was a lad, by the Elven Lord Finrod Felagund in reward for saving his life. And remember, Finrod is Galadriel's brother. So this lad Barahir saved Finrod's life, and Finrod's like, oh, dude, thanks a million. Here, take my lucky ring and, enjoy it.
Pass it down to some lad called King Elisar, or Strider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got lots of nicknames, you'll find him out there. Yeah, he'll be around. It was a sign of eternal friendship between Finrod and the House of Barahir. And Barahir's hand and ring were taken by the orcs that killed him, but were retrieved by his son Beren when he avenged his father. And Beren laid the hand to rest with the rest of his father's body, but kept and wore the ring. So kind of gross. This is like
good thing you didn't mix those up.
First
as well.
stage stuff. Yeah, like first stage stuff. There was like just like war and battles and just like madness going on. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So when you read the Silmarillion, you're like, oh my god, what's going on?
Yeah.
So just going to read a very short quote here from the Silmarillion, which is from the chapter of Beren and Luthien, and the quote is: "Death you can give me, earned or unearned, but names I will not take from you of baseborn, nor spy, nor thrall. By the ring of Felagund that he gave to Barahir my father on the battlefield of the north, my house has not earned such names from any elf, be he king or no." Thus spoke Beren Erchamion in the halls of mighty Thingol, as he held aloft the ring, and the green jewels gleamed there that the Noldor had devised in Valinor. For this ring was like to twin serpents, whose eyes were emeralds, and their heads met beneath the crown of golden flowers, that the one upheld and the other devoured. That was the badge of Finarfin and his house. So
cool.
That's really cool. So basically, this thing had green jewels that were devised and made by the elves in Valinor, and then here they are off in Middle Earth, and Beren is holding this jewel up, and the elves are looking at it like, oh my god, we want that. It's like, I don't know, it's like going up to like a I don't know, a crack addict to be like, I got some delicious crack.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, give me that crack.
Crack from Valinor.
Yeah, it's the best crack on the planet. So that's the ring of Barahir. There is a whole long spiel I have here, but I think I'm going to just move swiftly on to the next item.
Yeah, cool.
That's all right.
Yeah, I like the Ring of Barahir. But did you say that is the crest of Finarfin's house? Was the two serpents, one devouring and the other with like a crown full of flowers, or was that like the symbol of the house, Finarfin or Fingol?
That it said that was the badge of Finarfin and his house.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So like they just changed their house sigil or symbol into a little ring, which I think is cool. So that'd be like, I don't know if Ned Stark had a little ring with like two dire wolves biting at each other, or you know,
He probably did.
he could have, yeah. Or the Lannisters, I don't know what their sigil is. Sorry, I'm talking Game of Thrones in case anyone's wondering, like, who the hell is Ned Stark?
Is it in Game of Thrones at one point somebody's putting like a seal? It's definitely with the Lannisters. They're putting a seal on like a letter, and he just gets his ring and he like pushes it into.
Well, that happens a lot
to the wax.
That happens an awful lot in those kind of.
Yeah, it does.
But I don't know. Is that always? Yeah, that's usually like your house sigil, because your house would be kind of your signature, I suppose. So nobody else would have it. So it's kind of to declare like this is from the House Lannister, and there cannot be a copy.
The Lannisters send her regards.
So we are going to move on now to the next item, and the next item on the list is something that we've also discussed previously, and so for that reason I'm not going to dwell too long on it, but it is an item called the Nauglamir. Now, do you remember what the Nauglamir is, Dave? I'll give you a clue.
Give me a clue.
It's another piece of jewellery. Very important piece of jewellery.
This is obviously a bloody Silmarillion thing, right?
You said an important word there.
It is balls. It has a Silmaril in it. Or sorry, the Silmaril is in the Nauglamir. But what is Stu? Is it a helmet? It's a shield. No, it's a sword. Is it?
No, it's not a weapon.
What is it? The Nauglamir. Is it a necklace? It is a necklace, yeah. Is it? Oh, okay. The Nauglamir. Oh, I think I remember. The Nauglamir was the item of jewellery that the elves and dwarves fought over repeatedly, and it was actually it comes from the disdain between the relationships of these two races. Like that was
the foundation of their hatred.
Exactly. Yeah. It was kind of. I think it was the elves had it at one point, and then the dwarves came and like slaughtered a bunch of elves and then returned and said that the elves actually gifted it to the dwarves, and one of the lads told a little fib, and then there was like I think they just kept going over and back and killing each other, right?
You're pretty close. Yeah, I'll give you that breakdown right now.
Okay.
So but well done. Good job, very good. So yes, so this was a necklace. It was called the Nauglamir, or it was called the Necklace of the Dwarves, and it was a famed piece of jewellery.
Yeah.
And it combined the craft of the dwarves with the gems of Valinor.
Oh,
and
yes.
It was of great grace and beauty, and it gave this grace and beauty to its wearer as well. And despite being loaded with gems, it apparently sat lightly on the neck. So nice. Very, very nice, very practical as well.
I was just going to say, isn't it? It was a perfect mixture. I think the elves wanted something to show great beauty, and they brought some dwarves over for craftsmanship to help them like build this necklace. And then the dwarves became like so obsessed with it that they ended up like murdering the elves.
Good man, Dave. You remember it well. You remember it there. Well, so basically this was where am I? And so this was more beautiful than anything ever before seen in Arda. But because of the Silmaril, it was coveted by the sons of Feanor and entangled the doom of the Noldor. So the Nauglamir was a golden necklace made for Finrod, again, same lad as we mentioned just before, and it was made by the dwarves of Nogrond and Belagost, in which were set countless gems that Finrod had brought with him from Valinor. Despite this, the carcanet weighed no more, as if it were made of straw, it is said. It was Finrod's most prized treasure in Nargothrond and the most famed dwarven work of the elder days. Now, Hurin, who we know from the children of Hurin, finds the Nauglamir in the ruins of Nargothrond as it had remained forgotten in the horde of Glaurung. And Glaurung, remember, was the dragon who destroyed Nargothrond.
The one that could,
and he brought...
he
was like the father of dragons, basically.
Yeah.
He had like
telekinesis,
telepathy.
telepathy. He could freeze you with just the stare of his eyes.
Oh yeah, he was a bad egg.
Freaky.
That. Yeah, so Hurin finds this piece of treasure in Nargothrond in the ruins, and he brought this famed treasure to the kingdom of Doriath, where he offered it to King Thingol as a gift for the care of his wife and his son during his time in Morgoth's dungeons. So there's a whole big story here. People don't know what's going on. Just bear with me. Right. So Hurin is this dude. He's a man. He was kept in Morgoth's prison. He was held there for a long time. He gets out. And during the time that he's there, King Thingol, who was an elf king, he kind of took care of Hurin's family, and so he was giving him this jewel to kind of say like, "Cheers to that man, I appreciate it." So then, after Hurin left Doriath, Thingol sought to have the treasure remade to bear the Silmaril of Luthien and Beren. And he had grown to love this jewel fiercely. So Thingol had this Silmaril, and he loved it. And he was like, I love this, and I also love this. I'm going to put them together and make the most amazing thing ever. So he wanted to put them together so basically he could wear it day and night as well. And he employed the work of the dwarves of Nauglamir. And the dwarves were enthralled by the beauty of the Nauglamir and the Silmaril, and they desired to possess them for themselves, but they agreed to the task nonetheless. After they completed their work, they refused to hand the treasure to Thingol, who had come alone into their smithy to receive it. Like, what an idiot. And then claiming that the king had no right to the Nauglamir since their fathers, this is the dwarves, had made it for Finrod, and it was stolen by Hurin from the halls of Nargothrond. But Thingol understood well that they only wished to possess the Silmaril, and answered with scorn, quote, "How do ye of uncouth race dare to demand aught of me, Elu, Thingol, Lord of Beleriand, whose life began by the waters of Cuvinian, years uncounted, ere the fathers of the stunted people awoke." Whew. So that is a... He was like bigged himself up and put them down at the same time. And did it with like grace and pizzazz.
Yeah,
so
I remember that already.
Pretty class. Yeah, Thingol. He was a class character up until he kind of did that when he was like on his own with this big army of dwarves. And so basically, after this, he told them, right, get out of here. I'm not even paying you anything. But the dwarves were like so pissed off, and they just killed him there and then. And they took the Nauglamir for themselves, and they carried it off to their home in the mountains. However, as they fled, they were pursued and they were killed by these avenging elves, who returned the Nauglamir then to Doriath. Mm-hmm. However, two of the dwarves who had killed Thingol and were involved in this big like battle then with the elves, two of them got away.
Tell your friends.
And they ran home. Then they ran home to their friends. And basically, they lied to everyone about what happened, and they said that King Thingol had ordered the elves to kill everybody just because he didn't want to pay them. And then this news basically roused the dwarves of Nauglamir to war, and they marched against Doriath. And the army of the dwarves overwhelmed the elves, and they just ransacked Menegroth. And there was the Battle of the Thousand Caves, it was called.
Yeah.
And they stole all the treasure in Doriath, and this is included in Nauglamir. And but then they were waylaid by Beren and a host of green elves who had been informed of what had befallen in Doriath by a messenger, and then the dwarves were all slain, and the treasure was cast into the river, except for the Nauglamir, which Beren bore back to Luthien, and he gave it to his Bjor, Luthien. That's the story of the Nauglamir.
A lot of killing. Nauglamir just going back and forth.
There's actually even loads more stuff that I'm going to read two more quick paragraphs just to give you the final ending to this tale. So then Luthien, who received it from Beren, she wore the Nauglamir for the rest of her life. And I remember Luthien was like the most beautiful thing that's ever existed in Middle-earth, basically. So the combining beauty of the fairest woman and the fairest jewel was just the most amazing sight in all of Valinor. And after her death, a lord of the Green Elves brought it to Doriath for her son Dior. But when the sons of Feanor heard about its whereabouts, they were compelled by the Oath of Feanor. That oath, for anybody who doesn't know, is that they had to go and reclaim all the Silmarils. And so they demanded that the Silmaril, they demanded it from Dior, and he gave no answer. So the sons of Feanor attacked Doriath, resulting in the second kinslaying. The kinslaying is when basically elf on elf battle and lots of horrible killing. And this results in the death of J.R.R. as well, who was another person in the royal line. But their attempt to reclaim the Silmarin failed, as J.R.R.'s daughter Elwing had fled beforehand to the havens of Sirion, carrying the Nauglamir with her. And Elwing, we'll learn more about her. The sons of Fëanor continued their pursuit of the Silmar and attacked the mouths of Sirion, leading to the third kinslaying. But Elwing cast herself into the sea to escape them, wearing the Nauglamir around her neck.
Turned into a bird.
While it's unknown what happened to the Nauglamir itself, after this, Elwing and the Silmaril were saved by none other than Ulmo, who brought her in the form of a great white bird to her husband Eärendil aboard his ship in the middle of the night. And Elwing was returned to her human form by morning. And together they sought the undying lands of Aman, guided by the light of the Silmaril, which Eärendil bound to his brow. They pierced through the shadowy seas and they found their way to Valinor. That is the story.
It's beautiful. I like to think that the Silmarils actually possess a power that if you eat them, you turn into a magical creature. So, like, that's what Elwing was doing. She jumped into the ocean. She was like, oh, and it was like, oh, I'm a bird. How handy. And I think, like, no matter what situation you're in, like, if you were in Harad, you might turn into, like, a snake or, I don't know, like a scorpion. And, you know, if you're in Fangorn, you might turn into a tree. But, that's what the Silmarils actually possess. Yes. Tolkien just didn't know. He didn't know it.
Didn't know. Thank God we're here to guide him. So, going to move on. We're nearly there. We're going to just do a couple more little objects. So, the next item on our list is the Phial of Galadriel. And this was a parting gift that she gave to Frodo Baggins when the Fellowship left Lothlorien. And it was known as the Star Glass because it held a little fragment of the light of the evening star Eärendil, which was one of the Silmarils, contained within the waters of Galadriel's mirror. It is thus a reflection of the light of the two trees of Aragorn, basically.
Nice.
Bit confusing. So while travelling to Mordor via Cirith Ungol, both Frodo and Sam, we see them that they use this light of the Phial to fend off attacks from Shelob. And Sam also used it in the book, which is not seen in the film. He also used it to overcome the will of the two watchers at the Tower of Cirith Ungol. Once they reached Mount Doom, however, the light from the glass faded because they were in the heart of Sauron's domain where its power could not reach. And Frodo took the Phial with him when he left Middle-earth for the Undying Lands. Its light faded away as the ship approached the shores of Eldamar. So that is our little story about the Phial of Galadriel.
Well, the Phial is cool. It's like it always just looks like a really nice bottle of perfume or something. And I love I love the way it's shown in the
Chanel
movie.
number 5.
Yeah. Or as we previously mentioned this character, Dior.
Dior.
Yeah. No, I think the way it looks in the movie is so satisfying. And yeah, whatever Frodo says to light up his powers, it's pretty cool. I don't know what he says, but he kind of goes, Caliber! I know
that's exactly what he says. Well done.
We said it on the podcast before, whatever he says, but no, I'd have to go back and listen to it.
Does he say like something about, he talks about Elbereth.
Elbereth. I know he says that in the book as like an expression, but I don't think that's part of his little mantra for... I don't know, guys, let us know what exactly Frodo says. Get in touch. And like and subscribe and share the podcast. But actually, it's funny, when you first brought up the Phial of Galadriel, I thought you were talking about like a finger file or something. I couldn't think of PHIAL.
A nail file.
Or a nail file, yeah. Something like that.
Or just a file, like she was like, I'm going to go through my cabinets and just like go through my files. We don't have you on record, sir.
Oh, this is the Phial of Galadriel. This is quite a large file. She's been around for quite a long time.
All right, we are going to keep powering on. We're running out of time, so we're going to try and keep this short. So the next item on our list is the Star of the Dunedain. This was a silver brooch shaped like a many-rayed star worn by the Arnor descended rangers of the north. Now, the Dunedain rangers who came to Aragorn at Dunharrow wore this on their clothing, specifically to fasten their cloaks on their left shoulder, and it served as part of their identity and was the only ornamentation the Rangers ever wore in their journeys. The star was also considered a badge of honour, and after the events of the War of the Ring, Aragorn gave his insignia to Sam Gamgee, the then mayor of the Shire. So bit of a mark of respect there.
Lovely.
The mayor of the Shire, here you go. Take my star of the Dunedain.
It's cool as well. It's like he's the sheriff of the town, like, because that's what a sheriff would have worn in Wild Wild West times, where they'd have a little star.
Yeah. He gave him the star and he gave him some spurs for his heels. Yeah. The next item on our list, again, is another one that will be known to people, which is the Horn of Gondor. Now, this was an heirloom of the stewards of Gondor, and it was also called the Great Horn. This was a horn that was made by Verondil the Hunter in the Third Age, and Verondil hunted oxen all the way to the Sea of Rhun and fashioned the horn out of one of the oxen's horns. It was passed down through the lines of the stewards of Gondor. During the War of the Ring, Boromir, son of Denethor, possessed the Horn of Gondor, just as it had been borne by the eldest son of the Lord Steward of Gondor for centuries. Boromir claimed that if the horn was heard anywhere within its borders, Gondor would come to the owner's aid.
That's cool.
And when Boromir was slain early in the Two Towers, the Horn of Gondor was cut in two by the orcs. The horn later washed up on the banks of the Anduin, where it was discovered by his brother Faramir. Thus, Denethor learned of his son's death. And I love a good, the Horn of Gondor. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
that imagery of
so
it being cloven in two as well. It's I don't know what it is about it. It's so synonymous. I also remember when I had those little models that you painted back in the day. You could also get the Horn of Gondor and attach it to Boromir, but the way it came packed, it was actually cloven in two, and you actually had to like piece the two of them together. And I always thought that was
cool,
an incredible coincidence. But Boromir, cool horn.
Very good. Also, very, very quickly, a little story about that's from the books, which we don't get in the movies, is that when they're like leaving Rivendell and they're about to go on their quest, I remember they're leaving like very early in the morning. It's, it's still dark, the sun hasn't risen yet, and they're kind of, it's a very secret, super top secret mission, and they're like, okay, don't let anybody know what's going on. Like, even the people, the other residents just didn't know what was going on. And Boromir just gives like 3 sharp blasts of his horn when he's leaving, and Gandalf's like, Boromir, what the feck you doing? Yeah. He's like, I will not go like a thief in the night. I will be. Boromir is pure like, I'm coming, guys. Okay, like anytime he's going to march into battle, he's like, I'm going to warn my enemies that I'm coming, because they're going to be scared shitless.
But that's how
that they know Boromir's on the way.
Yeah, I like the way he's got the most recognizable sound in Middle Earth, and he's just like, I'm just going to let this go on my secret mission.
Yeah, he's just got like a really loud ringtone on his phone that's going off at all hours, and Gandalf's like, Boromir, you turn off that phone. He's like, people need to know that I'm a busy man. I get loads of calls in the middle of the night, right?
It's like that really recognizable ringtone in Jurassic Park 3, in the dinosaur poop.
Yeah.
That's Barahir now.
The Horn of Gondor. Boromir.
Moving on, we have. Now, there's a couple of things here that I mentioned that I'm not going to go into detail, but I just sort of, said, okay, we're going to put them on the list.
Throw them out.
Things like Mithril, of course, again, very, very important object that exists in Middle Earth. It's got lots of kind of magical qualities. We know that it's stronger than steel, but it's lighter in weight. And one small thing I will say about this, which is quite interesting, is that Tolkien first wrote of it in The Lord of the Rings. And it was like, so he didn't write about it in The Hobbit. And it was retrospectively mentioned in the second revised edition of The Hobbit in 1966. So in the first 1937 edition, the mail shirt given to Bilbo was described as being made of silvered steel. So then obviously when he got to writing The Lord of the Rings, he upped it to this mithril thing, and he kind of, and then... the rest is history.
And then the Rings of Power changed his whole backstory to the leaves of the Hithai or whatever.
We'll see. Oh my God, we'll see what happens there. But we'll say no more. We'll say no more on that. Other things that obviously made the list that were honorable mentions were the Mirror of Galadriel. Again, basically just a basin that she fills with water, and then you can look into it, and you get to see these visions of things that are, some things are past, some things are present, some things are future, and some things have not yet come to pass.
So the future.
The future, yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to say the future, but...
You said the future twice. Anyway. So which is
the past, the present, the future, and the future.
Yeah, exactly. And the stuff that hasn't happened yet, which is also the future, I guess. Is it the water, or is it the basin that's magical?
I don't know.
No, we don't know.
Therein lies the question, and I don't know the answer. No, it doesn't really... I don't think it's ever mentioned.
Because I always... I'm always surprised where in the movie where she's like pouring in that delicious looking water, and I'm like, what if that water's not magic and it kind of corrupts the rest of the basin water? Do you know, like, did you pull that out of a magic pool, or what's going on there?
Well, I will say one thing, that the Vial of Galadriel, which you just spoke about before, contained water from the basin.
Oh, well, there you go.
So that's something to know. So I do think that the water did have some magical properties.
Cool.
I imagine the basin also was. It's probably the combination of the two things together. Yeah, we do get one thing. I'm going to give you one other thing that I suppose that wasn't mentioned in the movies, which was that Samwise Gamgee also was allowed a vision, which turned out to be a choice between returning to the Shire to prevent its destruction or to continue on the quest with his master to prevent Sauron from conquering all of Middle-earth. So that was just one thing that we didn't get to see, I suppose, in the thing. Next thing on the list, again, one of the final things here is the Palantiri. I suppose they should get a little shout out as well. Yeah. Which we've already spoken about quite a few times.
We have a whole episode on that, folks. So if you really want to get into it,
go check that out. Again, other things that I can't get into because again they need more time would be, of course, probably the most important objects in all of Middle-earth's like Legendarium, which are the 3 Silmarils. And this trio of objects is more important to the lore of Middle-earth than anything else. Okay, it defines, I suppose, going back to if you read the Silmarillion, these are the basis for the whole thing just kind of going tits up in the First Age. Yeah. And then, as we mentioned, what happened with the Nauglamir, that was just one Silmaril was attached to that, and that was the beginning, that was the basis for the hatred between the elves and the dwarves. And we have Feanor's sons who are just going around the place trying to like their whole reason for living is to try and reclaim these Silmarils. So they just wreak absolute havoc, but they are basically the most beautiful jewels and the most incredible creations in all of Middle-earth. And so they definitely warrant a place on our list. And that is it, guys. We have come to the end of our episode, so I hope you have enjoyed that. I hope you have got some information about lots of interesting artifacts and heirlooms and objects and all sorts of things. Some of them with magical properties, some of them just cool, and I like the idea of them. There were lots of things that I just couldn't get into. I wanted to mention a little bit as well. The dragon helm of Dorlomin, which we see as well. It's this awesome helmet, which does make a little appearance in the Rings of Power as well. There's a scene where you see it in the background. You're like, oh, there's the dragon helm. But there's too much stuff. There's too much. We can't. Maybe we'll come back. We'll revisit this and we'll come back into another episode at another time. But for today, that's all we got. Dave, what was your favorite item on the list?
Too many. First ones comes to mind is Boromir's horn. It's class, the Horn of Gondor.
It's class. Oh,
so cool, and noticeably one of the few items on the list that's not really magical. Like it's probably got otherworldly powers, and like the fact that you can hear it from miles around, and the fact that anyone can recognize it. It's probably like within a Gondorian heart to just know the sound of that horn, no matter if you've ever heard it or not. Like that's the effect.
Baby wakes up, it's just like, oh, there's Barahir.
It's most babies' first words. It's just murr, murr, murr. Yeah, but
and on that bombshell, we shall end our episode. So thanks so much everyone for tuning in. Once again, of course, as always, please give us a like, give us a share, and what would really help us out is if you could please leave us a rating and a 5-star rating at that. Leave a little comment, and tell your friends. Share the pod. Leave us a review too and say those guys are awesome and tell your friends. But yeah, for now, thank you so much, Johnny, and thank you everyone for listening. Have a great day, morning, evening, probably. All right, guys, all the best. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Ciao.